Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield myself such time as I may consume. We strongly oppose this bill, which is an assault on all the progress we've made over the last several years in telework policy. Telework has strengthened private and public workplaces across the land, enhanced productivity, increased efficiency, improved the morale and satisfaction of the workforce, reduced traffic congestion, and made positive environmental changes. When the chairman says it's time to return to work, I believe this is a misnomer because people who participate in telework are working. They're already working, and so they don't need to return to work. This bill would take a sledgehammer to federal telework policy and law, which the sponsors seem completely oblivious to, and you can hardly blame them because the leadership brings this measure forward without the benefit of even a single hearing in the Oversight Committee, which means Congress has not heard from the Office of Personnel Management, it's not heard from any of the federal agency chiefs, it's not heard from any federal workers or their collective bargaining representatives. It hasn't heard from any of the stakeholders other than secondhand, I guess, through hearsay, the mayor of Washington, D.C., who, not surprisingly, seems to be resistant, at least according to that report, to telework policy. But this is an arbitrary effort to roll back all of the progress that has been made under legislation and administrative rules over the last decade without any participation at all of the key stakeholders. The bill falsely equates the development of telework as part of a balanced federal workplace policy by OPM and the agencies, with the sudden and near complete shift to virtual work in certain sectors because of the pandemic. And those are two completely different things. This conflation produces nothing but confusion, and the bill is a wrecking ball against telework policy, which has been a critical success in so many workplaces. Colleagues, the workplace is changing because of extraordinary new technology and a new focus on productivity and efficiency, as opposed to industrial age assembly line seating and command and control work relations. Before the pandemic, hybrid and remote work were already growing far more prevalent across professions, particularly for jobs performed in an office setting. The pandemic accelerated these dynamics, not only in the federal workplace, but even more dramatically in the private sector. But from fiscal year 2019 to 20, as we entered the pandemic, federal telework doubled from roughly 500,000 people to more than 1 million. Practically overnight, traditional barriers to telework, such as technological obstacles and management resistance, began to disappear. Federal agencies implemented sweeping new guidelines as an essential tool for the continuity of government operations. This was the pandemic, of course, will not last forever. Indeed, the president announced that he plans to end the public health emergency on May 11. So the federal government will not maintain a pandemic-level telework posture in perpetuity, but we cannot ignore the lessons that we've learned over the last several years. As the OPM put it in its 2021 annual report on the status of telework, there is no going back. Enhanced demand in the national workforce and among federal employees will continue as workers and supervisors report greatly enhanced productivity and focus from flexible work practices that reduce time wasted in endless in-person meetings, water cooler gossip sessions, and the proverbial BS sessions that overcome so many people's offices. According to a survey by the conference board, 82% of companies are going to offer hybrid work options to employees going forward. And the number of private companies willing to let at least some portion of their workforce go fully remote has tripled to an astonishing 36%. In another survey, 63% of employees rated the value of 2 to 3 days being able to work from home as equivalent to a pay raise. To remain competitive with the private sector with which we compete, the federal government must offer reasonable telework options. OPM says it well, observing that we must appreciate the sea change in the American labor market. Telework saves money, it helps the government recruit top talent, it reduces traffic gridlock, it makes environmental sense, and it ensures a continuity of operations at agencies that Americans rely on every single day. It is a lifeline for people who have disabilities or are immunocompromised, and it offers dramatically expanded opportunities for people living in more rural areas to enter and sustain a career in the federal service. So we cannot enter a time machine and simply wish away the utility of telework in recruiting and retaining new generations of federal workers. We should embrace telework as part of a balanced workplace policy to promote employee satisfaction and overall mission outcome. OPM Director Kiran Ahuja offers a clear-eyed vision for the future in her annual report, saying federal agencies must continue to embrace workplace flexibility, such as telework, to remain competitive for top talent. Decisions about telework, however, must be driven by delivery of mission. We all work for the American public, and how we best serve them needs to be the paramount consideration. So that means telework does not make sense for every worker in every office or every activity. If you're guarding the Capitol, obviously you need to be present. If you are researching groups that were involved in the insurrection against the Capitol, you might be able to work part of that time virtually. Processing paper tax returns at the IRS may indeed require in-person work, but I will note that although people are blaming the problems with IRS responsiveness on telework, that does not make sense to me. Telephone work is something that can be done from the office, home office, or somewhere else, which is why we have been, on our side of the aisle, invested in increasing staff at the IRS, because our constituents are so frustrated with being left on the phone and not getting answers returned about when they will be getting their IRS refund. So in the Inflation Reduction Act, we added 5,000 new positions for people on the phones to respond to our constituents. I know that some of our colleagues across the aisle have opposed additional funding for IRS positions, and that is surely a far more likely culprit than whatever telework policies are in place over at the IRS. So the Biden administration's telework guidance seeks to strike a balance between getting people who need to be in person back in the office safely and helping agencies design their post-pandemic telework plans to build off the prior successes of this policy. And